Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the ARCA Menards Series Rewind Show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's ARCA Rewind, we're looking back at the Crowe 100 laps. Actually, we did go a skosh into overtime. We actually went 102 laps. 100 miles around the 1 mile dirt track at the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield, Illinois. And first off, I apologize for this being a little later than it probably should have been. We were backed up with rewind shows from the Cup Series in Canaan West because we were in Springfield yesterday and that got snowballed into today. So I do apologize for that. This should have been out a little bit ago, but we're getting it out now nonetheless. So, this was an up and down race in terms of quality. It started off really well. The first 10 laps were really good. The track was wet enough that and soft enough that we actually got some really good racing in the first 10 laps. And then it rained. And rained hard enough that we had to red flag it and the track got really soupy. And they had to go out and dry it enough to where we could go back and race on it again. And the problem was and we had decent racing there for another probably 10, 15, maybe 20 laps after the rain caution. But the problem was once the rain moved through, the sun came out, beat down on the track, dried it out, and it just wasn't very good after the track dried out. And I think unfortunately, that's kind of what we have come to expect from these Springfield races. I would say the dirt races as a whole, but DuQuoin is going to be a night race this year. So I'm expecting a little bit better from DuQuoin this year. But when the sun just beats down on the track and dries it out, you get this one lane track around the bottom. Nobody can really do anything. Nobody's really sliding, and it more becomes a pavement race than it is a dirt race. And then you kind of lose your appeal of it being a dirt race because it's not racing like a dirt race. It's just kind of a crappy pavement race. So let's get into it. 4 caution flags in this race for a total of 25 laps. First one came before we even got one lap completed. I was on lap 1 as the 7 of Eric Caudell spun and found the wall in turn number 3. Then we had the rain caution at lap 10, which brought out the red flag, got everything dried out, and we continued. Third caution came at lap 26 as the 06 of Tim Richmond spun on the backstretch. Final caution came right before the end of the race. We had a long green flag run after the Tim Richmond spin until lap 93 when the 18 of Ty Gibbs and the 77 of Joe Graff Jr. got together in turn 4. This set up an overtime finish which changed the complexion of this race a lot because as we look at the lap leaders here, Logan Seavey led the first 6 laps of this race from the pole before he relinquished it to Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs hadn't been on a dirt track at all before this weekend. Takes the lead on lap 6, leads for the next 10 laps until the rain caution. Until lap 16, until after the rain caution, when Corey Heim takes the lead off of that restart. Corey Heim led for 11 laps after that before Logan Seavey retook the lead at lap 28 off of differing pit strategies. We had different pit strategies going on here. Crew chiefs felt like that they could make it about 80 laps or so on their tires. So we had teams pitting at different points trying to out-pit everybody else. And Logan Seavey kind of took the lead there on 28 off of that pit strategy, led for 28 laps until he was passed by his teammate Michael Self on lap 56. Michael Self started running away with this race until this overtime caution, and that changed the complexion of things completely because that allowed a lot of cars to come down and change tires. And we had a lot of cars charging through the field on this overtime restart. They only had 2 laps because it was overtime, but we had a lot of cars charging through the field to try and get up to the front and challenge Michael Self, who did not pit under this caution, as did a few other cars. So, did Michael Self hold on to win this race, his first race on dirt? Or would we see someone else completely. Would Christian Eckes defend his win in this race from last year? Would the dirt track ace Logan Seavey be able to pick up the win in this one? Or would the dirt track aces that came in, Kelly Kovsky and Ryan Unzicker, would they be able to pull an upset in this race? No, Michael Self would be able to hold on at the end of the race. Christian Eckes did seem to be catching him on that overtime restart. If he'd had more than 2 laps, I think Eckes might have been able to do something with Michael Self. But Self, fantastic run out of him for never having actually raced on dirt before. We talked to him about it in the post-race interview. He's got a little bit of experience on dirt, but nothing in a race environment. And that's the biggest thing, is there's a difference in learning how to drive on dirt by yourself and learning how to drive on dirt in a race situation. And, I mean, it took him about 50 laps, but once he figured it out, he had it down. He was doing pretty well at it, but again, as Logan Seavey told us in the post-race interview, the Springfield race races more like a pavement race than it does a dirt race. And I think that's due in part a lot to the fact that it's early afternoon when you run it and the sun's just kind of beating down, drying out the track. So at the same time, yes, it is a dirt race, but it has a lot of pavement elements to it. And I think that helped Michael Self to an extent in this race. Eckes did charge his way back to the second position. He had fallen back to, I want to say, around 5th or 6th before that caution. He was pretty far back there and was going to lose a good amount of points. So that last caution really helped him a lot. Still losing points in this race, obviously, because Self won and he finished second, but not near as many as he would have lost had that last caution not come out. Bret Holmes also made a late charge, came up to the 3rd position. Logan Seavey fell to 4th. And Will Kimmel with a strong top 5 finish. We talked to him about it at the end of the race, how he always seems to be strong in these dirt races. Remember, he finished 2nd at DuQuoin last year. And he kind of attributes that to dirt being the great equalizer in ARCA. It doesn't matter. As long as your equipment is somewhat within the same ballpark, you can run with everybody else. And Will Kimmel seems to show that very well, bringing his best car that he's got and coming home with a top 5 finish. So kudos there to that Kimmel Racing team for a strong top 5 finish. Rest of your top 10 were Kelly Kovsky, Corey Heim, Carson Hocevar, Ryan Unzicker, and Joe Graff Jr. 11th through 20th, Travis Braden started off pretty well and unfortunately just had different things happen throughout the race. I think he had an overheating issue at one point and just unfortunately at the end was not a factor. I know that team was really hoping for some good runs here on the dirt to kind of turn around the points gap that they have kind of accumulated lately. Unfortunately, at least the first round of dirt did not go the way they wanted it to. 5 laps down in the 11th position. Ty Gibbs, after an overheating issue at one point as well, came back out and then had that scuffle with Joe Graff Jr. at the end. He came home in the 15th position. Then, of course, final page down here, 21st, Wayne Peterson did not make it one full lap with brake issues. So that's your results from the Alan Crowe 100. We do have post-race interviews from the track linked down below in the description with all of your top 5 finishers: Michael Self, Christian Eckes, Bret Holmes, Logan Seavey, and Will Kimmel. They are linked, as I said, down below in the description, so if you want to hear from any of them, that is where you can go to hear their post-race thoughts. All right, so let's look at the point standings following the Alan Crowe 100. 4 races left in the 2019 ARCA season. We're getting right down to it now. We got 1 dirt race left in DuQuoin. We've got Salem in September, and then October we wrap up the season at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis and in Kansas. So we're getting right down to it at this point, and Michael Self slowly starting to gap Christian Eckes. Eckes, he's still got time to make up this gap, but it's getting down to it. Like I said, he can still do it, but I think he needs to pop off another win or two to really be back in this. 105 points is the gap right now between Self and Eckes, and the biggest difference right now with these two and their season, I think there's a couple big differences. One, Michael Self has 4 wins this season compared to Eckes' 2. But Eckes has 1 more top 10 than Michael Self does. Eckes has 13 top 10s to Michael Self's 12 top 10s. All of Michael Self's top 10s have been top 5s. Michael Self has not had a finish this year in the 6th to 10th bracket, whereas Eckes has 9 top 5s to his 13 top 10s. So a much more consistent season out of Christian Eckes, even without even with 2 less wins. The biggest difference right now, I think, though, is the fact that Eckes missed that first Salem race this year. I think that's been the biggest nail in the coffin for Eckes' season. He's not out of this yet, but I think if when we get to the end of the season, if Christian Eckes is not able to make up this deficit and Michael Self wins the championship, I think that's what we've got to look at as maybe the biggest difference in this season. Not necessarily that if Eckes had raced at Salem, he would automatically be the champion. But I think that's the biggest thing right here, because you think about how many points were left on the table there with Eckes not even being in the race. Of course, he could have had problems in that race, could have wrecked on lap 2 and finished in, I don't remember how many cars were in that race, but we'll just say 20th. And really not made any points anyway. But odds are he probably would have finished at least top 5. We know he's pretty good at Salem. He's won at Salem before. So odds are he would have had a pretty good finish. And you throw in those points, so let's say he finished 5th in that race, that would put him currently in the points lead if everything after that point had shaken out exactly as it has up to this point. So, there's a lot of what-ifs to this, and we don't know how this is going to turn out for the next 4 races, but I think if Eckes does lose out on this championship, I think that is the biggest reason for it. And it's not like you can fault him for that. I mean, he had food poisoning. It's not like he can race 200 laps at Salem with food poisoning. That's just not feasible. So it's not like you can fault him for missing that Salem race, but at the same time, I think that has been the biggest difference this season in his championship quest. So it's unfortunate, but again, he's not out of this yet. He can still win this championship. So we'll have to see what happens in the next 4 races in this championship battle between Michael Self and Christian Eckes. And don't forget about Bret Holmes. Bret Holmes is not out of this yet. Travis Braden is slipping a little bit out of it at this point. 220 points back for Travis Braden in 4th. That's a lot to make up in 4 races. I think we're almost to the point where we can count Travis Braden out of the championship battle. Bret Holmes, though, still is in this. It's going to take a little bit of bad luck for Self and Eckes for Holmes to really be a legitimate championship threat in the next 4 races, but he's still in this. It is still possible that Bret Holmes could get up here and challenge Michael Self and Christian Eckes for this. So, not necessarily counting Bret Holmes out yet, and if he continues to put up good runs like he did in Springfield, it is definitely possible. But that's your point standings following the Alan Crowe 100, and I believe that'll do it for us on this ARCA Rewind. Had a cup, like I said earlier, had a Cup Rewind and a K&N West Rewind go up earlier today, and that is why this kind of got pushed back later in the day than it really should have been. But this will finally wrap up this busy weekend on the racing scene. We had every series in action this weekend. We had all 3 national series at Bristol, as well as K&N East at Bristol, had K&N West at Evergreen, and we had this ARCA race at Springfield. So we had a lot going on this weekend. Finally through all of it, though. Diecast review coming up on Wednesday, and to give you a little sneak preview, we are looking at these 2. Got a couple of customs in earlier. You probably noticed them already. There's some really cool looking cars. So we're going to look at those, the Christian Eckes and Michael Self cars for 2019 on Diecast Review on Wednesday. And then fairly slow weekend next weekend. Only trucks at Mosport and Xfinity at Road America. So fairly quiet weekend, not a lot going on. But after everything that went on this weekend, it'll be nice to not have quite so much to run around and cover next weekend. So And then we'll be back for Darlington the weekend after that. So, I mean, we got lots coming up for you. And, yeah, that'll be the weekend of DuQuoin. So we will be in DuQuoin that weekend for the ARCA race down there as well. So lots of stuff coming up for you in the next few weeks. If you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the ARCA Menards Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.